This was the clip from America's most notorious woke skit show, Saturday Night Live, that has been brutally mocked for a failed comedic attempt.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Now, I'm going to start screaming questions at these women like I'm Billy Eichner. Antisemitism, yay or nay?
I'm sorry, what?
Yes or no is calling for the genocide of Jews against the Code of Conduct for Harvard.
Well, it depends on the context.
What? That can't be your answer, you pen lady. Same question, yes or no?
Well, we are serious about stopping all forms of hatred, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia.
And then the second one, and my tea lady, chance to steal. And keep in mind, if you don't say yes, you're gonna make me look good, which is really, really hard to do.
The skit, which aired on Saturday, has been slammed for getting it all wrong after 3 US university presidents failed to condemn students who called for a genocide of Jews. 3 presidents from Harvard, MIT and the University of Pennsylvania faced questioning on how the universities were responding to the rise of anti-Semitism on college campuses, but instead only added more fuel to the fire. The hearing saw Claudine Gay, Liz McGill and Sally Kornbluth all fail to publicly condemn students who were calling for a genocide of Jews.
Does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Penn's code of conduct when it comes to bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
It can be harassment.
The answer is yes. And Dr. Gay, at Harvard, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Harvard's rules of bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
It can be, depending on the context.
What's the context?
Targeted as an individual, targeted at an individual.
It's targeted at Jewish students, Jewish individuals. Do you understand your testimony is dehumanizing them? So the answer is yes, that calling for the genocide of Jews violates Harvard Code of Conduct, correct?
Again, it depends on the context.
It does not depend on the context. The answer is yes, and this is why you should resign. These are unacceptable answers across the board.
The skit instead, however, mocked the Republican committee chairwoman, Elise Stefanik, who was grilling the university presidents. SNL has been labelled tone deaf for its cringe attempt to make Congresswoman Stefanik look dumb instead of focusing on the actual takeaway from the hearing. The New York Post wrote that while the topic was worthy to open the show with, the target of the sketch wasn't about the university presidents. Instead, writers turned their poison pens on Congresswoman Stefanik. Chloe Trost played Stefanik as a vain, shrieking attention whore hell-bent on scoring political points, while the academics, painted as too smart for the little people, outfoxed her with their rhetorical prowess and stonewalling.
But what is more jarring to me is how unfunny that was. That is, I can't believe that was comedy.
No.
That was an attempt at comedy, what you just heard.
That was maybe, I'm being kind, a high school talent show.
Maddie, this skit was 31 flavors of cringe. How could anyone have watched that hearing last week, heard everything those presidents from Harvard and Penn said under oath, and came away with the idea that Elise Stefanik, Republican Congresswoman, who asked good, solid, pointed, basic questions, that she should be the target of satire? Why? Because she has an R next to her name? I mean, this skit was flaming hot garbage. Did the show hire Rashida Tlaib as its head writer? It may as well go down as the most tone-deaf, most horribly acted, by the way, skit this show, which has been on for 5 decades, has ever done. I mean, you could feel the studio audience. They were squirming in their seats. And Lorne Michaels, who runs things over at SNL to this day, for him as a Jewish man to greenlight this script is enough to make your hair hurt. You know, this used to be a show, by the way, that hit both sides without apology. Dana Carvey's impression of George H.W. Bush was simply the best. He even got invited to the White House to perform it in front of him. Darrell Hammond as Bill Clinton, especially during the Monica Lewinsky years, that was absolute genius. Will Ferrell as George W. Bush was epic. Then the show decided that mocking Barack Obama was basically off limits, and that's when we started to see the turn where it began to truly take a side.
And the New York Congresswoman was not happy. Her team blasted the SNL sketch in a comment to the Daily Mail, claiming they'd been flooded with messages from both Republicans and Democrats who were appalled and disgusted by the anti-Semitic trash spewed by unfunny, morally bankrupt comedians. SNL made history with the worst cold open ever because everyone knows there is absolutely no humour in the vile answers from the university presidents regarding their failure to condemn calls for the genocide of the Jewish people. But this kind of takedown of Stefanik is only the latest example of the show's history with playing politicians. For years, Saturday Night Live has frequently been accused of being too woke and targeting Republicans over Democrats. For example, it will regularly poke fun at Donald Trump, especially when he served as president, but has hardly ever touched Joe Biden's common on-stage gaffes.
Hello, thank you for coming. I'd like to start by answering the question that's on everyone's mind. Yes, this is real life. This is really happening. On January 20th, I, Donald J. Trump, will become the 45th President of the United States. I'm really looking forward to seeing him next week at his dinner for schmucks, as he calls it. Let's cut to the chase, folks. We need wall, okay? We have a tremendous amount of drugs flowing into this country from the southern border, or the brown line, as many people have asked me not to call it. That's why we need wall, because wall works.
Does SNL mock Joe Biden? SNL will somewhat gently mock Joe Biden here and there, but not to the tune that we saw with his predecessor, where Alec Baldwin as Donald Trump. This was a weekly event. It was an angry event. It wasn't even comedy so much as it was commentary. So Biden will get hit a little bit on his age, but trust me, it's gentle. The portrayal of Elise Stefanik was reportedly even too controversial for SNL alum Cecily Strong, who was set to appear on the show for the first time since December last year. The New York Post reported that the former star backed out of playing Elise Stefanik in the cold open last minute because she was uncomfortable with it.
And I think it really speaks to her integrity, because she had actually gone through the when they did it ahead of time. But I think that the identification of Elise Stefanik as the antagonist here, as opposed to recognizing what is going on in the universities, just shows how clueless Saturday Night Live was.
But the real critics came from the internet when X, formerly known as Twitter, was flooded with users calling the skit a swing and a miss. Fox News' Greg Gutfeld wrote, "How to explain SNL's siding with Ivy League neo-racists, wondering what colleges their writers attended." Outkick's page wrote, "The sketch was painfully unfunny and the internet hated it." One person wrote, "Saturday Night Live hates Republicans more than anti-Semitism." Another wrote, "Gotta be the worst cold open I've ever seen on SNL. Absolutely abysmal." SNL is such an embarrassment. Last night's cold open was cringeworthy and offensive, and the show has been thunderously unfunny for decades, another wrote. Podcaster Derek Hunter tweeted, "This is shockingly bad by NBC SNL. The only jokes come in at the end with Kenan Thompson. The rest is so interested in making Elise Stefanik look stupid that it misses the whole point. Hamas could have written a funnier script. Pathetic."
This gives plenty of ammunition to SNL's critics that say you used to be a show that was unapologetic, that would hit all sides, that comedy is comedy. You can't find a skit on Kamala Harris, for example, who provides, trust me, enough material to make Saturday Night Live every night live, but they stay away from her for obvious reasons. And I think about all the stars that Saturday Night Live has turned out over the years. Belushi, Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Chevy Chase, Eddie Murphy, Adam Sandler, Mike Myers, Chris Farley, Dana Carvey, Will Ferrell, Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, Kristen Wiig. We're not seeing any breakout stars coming out of SNL anymore because I think they've lowered the bar in terms of the type of talent that they're hiring and the writers that they are employing. And that's because the people on this show currently are woke.